The shadows have awakened, and they are devouring the world, with a hunger suppressed for thousands of years. In the depths of the ziggurats of Ur, where Enlil, the Sumerian god of wind, once scattered darkness with his roaring storms and brought the breeze of life to the plains of Mesopotamia, now a black and creeping shadow has burst from the heart of the mysterious tablet, covering the carved stones like fresh and sticky blood. Nergal, the Sumerian god of death, with a bony face and eyes black as endless wells, rises from his thousands-year-old sleep. His cold and infectious breaths freeze the air, spreading the smell of rotting flesh and dead soil. And the sense of death penetrates the bones like an iron claw, where every breath becomes labored and darkness chokes the throat like a thick and sticky liquid, plunging the audience into a deep horror as if their own soul is melting in this shadow. And the surrounding world responds with an imperceptible tremor, as if the heart of the earth has stopped in fear. The stones of the ziggurat tremble with a sound like the groan of broken and crushed bones, and the reliefs of Enlil fade as if the invisible claws of Nergal, with sharp and infectious nails made from the flesh of the dead, are scratching them, dripping black blood from the walls. The group of explorers, several specialists in archaeology from different lands, but led by Arya, a young, tall and powerful woman with long black hair, always tied firmly, her elongated and piercing eyes lined with black coal that makes her gaze mysterious and impenetrable, and confident movements that speak of her inner self-assurance, enter with trembling torches and weak flames flickering in the cold wind, the air heavy with the smell of damp soil and old blood that burns the nose. Suddenly Arya, who has always had a stronger sixth sense, feels something invisible and cold, like bony fingers penetrating her mind, a terrifying and paralyzing whisper that speaks of the secrets of the fall of the gods of light. Humans themselves built the seal to imprison the darkness, but now this seal has cracked. And Nergal attacks with a cold and growling laugh. The torches extinguish one by one, and darkness envelops them like a cold and sticky wave, the sense of fear intensified by the trembling bodies and the sound of heartbeats pounding in the ears. Arya screams, but her voice is lost in the shadow. The shadow spreads from Sumer like black and poisonous smoke that poisons the air and reaches the snow-covered mountains of Scandinavia, where Odin once overcame Loki with wisdom and sharp eyes and foresaw the future. Hel, the Norse goddess of the dead, with half her body decayed and the other half alive but cold like the ice of death, wails from the depths of the ice, a sound that echoes like the scream of lost souls in the wind. The explorers who have arrived by helicopter to find a sign of Freya encounter frozen bones that seem to come alive and crawl toward them. The bones moving with a cracking sound and filling the air with the smell of frozen death. But Arya, whose visions have grown stronger, finds a small relief of Freya that emits a slight golden light and gives a momentary warmth, a sudden hope that reveals the complexity of the hidden alliance of the dark gods, an alliance that has waited in the shadows for centuries, like a network of rotten roots underground. But suddenly the ice cracks with a roar, and one of the explorers slips and falls into the depth of the crevice, the deadly cold sense filling the air, and Arya screams, but the wind swallows her wail. The dense forests of Russia are hidden under a cold fog that wraps around the neck like invisible and suffocating hands. Vesna, the Slavic goddess of winter, with icy hair and eyes white as the snow of death, now spreads her shadows, turning trees into ice statues whose eyes seem to follow the explorers with hatred, and branches bend like sharp claws. The group, searching for a trace of Perun, encounters winds that whisper forgotten names, cold winds that cut the skin and shake the bones. Arya has a hallucination. Perun chained and screaming about human betrayal, the complexity of the seal that humans weakened with the forgetfulness of the gods of light. But the cold wind extinguishes one of the torches and darkness draws closer. Arya feels the shadow of Vesna penetrating her mind and darkening her memories. The sense of fear intensified by the trembling body and the sound of the wind like the laugh of death. The sands of the Egyptian desert wave under the dim moon like a living and angry sea of darkness. Where Ra once triumphed over Apophis, the giant serpent of chaos with venomous teeth that swallows the sun with his heavenly boat. Now shadow-like serpents of Apophis crawl out from under the pyramids, with twisted bodies and red eyes that gnaw the sands and fill the air with the smell of sulfur. The explorers who have taken refuge there to find a sign of Thoth encounter walls where the inscriptions come alive and narrate the story of the Dark Alliance, an alliance from Sumer to Egypt, complex in the layers of history like a deadly spiderweb. But suddenly, the serpents attack, biting one of the explorers and spreading a cold poison that broadcasts the sense of death and paralyzes the body, and the shadow penetrates the nearby city of Cairo, causing mysterious power outages in the streets and screams of terror from people that echo in the dark night. The explorers, with their colleague injured, decide to return to the ziggurat of Ur to find the cause, where the reliefs of Enki, the god of water and knowledge, still remain, and the sacred waters were once healing. But the shadow of Nergal blackens the waters like ink of death that bubbles and spreads cold vapor, and Arya has a deeper hallucination. Enki chained and screaming about the broken seal, the complexity that indicates the betrayal of some gods of light who sacrificed themselves to save the world. But suddenly the walls collapse with a roar, and the group is separated. Arya is left alone in the darkness, and the sense of darkness is intensified by the sound of falling stones, like Nergal's laugh and the suffocating smell of soil. She screams, but does not hear her own voice. The jungles of Yucatan are hidden under heavy rain that seems like black and sticky blood, where Chak, the Maya god of rain, fertilized the earth and his drops brought life. The explorers, searching for a trace of Chak, encounter pyramids where the shadow of Arpuch, the god of death, with a skeletal face and empty eyes that suck the soul, falls upon them. The stones crack with a sound like screams of pain, and plants blacken like hands that choke and twist. Local people in the nearby city see collective hallucinations, shadows that bring dead loved ones to life and drive them to madness with whispering voices. The initial victory of darkness that destroys the key pyramid with a massive tremor, and the group of explorers loses one of its members in the collapse, but Arya finds a small sign from Chak that emits weak light, a hope that quickly fades with the acid rain that burns the skin, and the sense of death mixes with the smell of burned flesh. The fire temples of Yazd still have faint flames that tremble like the last breaths of life and cast trembling shadows on the walls, where Anahita, the Persian goddess of water, blessed the rivers, and the flow of water was clear like flowing life. The explorers arrive there to find a trace of Anahita, but the black water carries the whisper of Ahriman, a whisper that penetrates the brain like a worm. The Greek explorer has a hallucination. Anahita hidden to hold the darkness, but shadows surround her and tear her apart with black claws, the complexity of the Dark Alliance that stretches from Persia to Greece like an invisible chain. Suddenly, the wildfire flares up and engulfs one of the explorers. The sense of cold mixes with the smell of burned flesh and screams of pain, Arya tries to save him, but her hands tremble. The Parthenon in Athens trembles under cold winds that seem like hell's breath and bring the smell of death, where Athena preserved wisdom with her shining shield and her eyes shone with the light of knowledge. The explorers, searching for a trace of Athena, encounter statues whose eyes have turned red and seem alive. The dark titans have awakened and break the stones with a roar. An old inscription narrates a secret. The Dark Alliance was planned since the time of the Titans, like a complex map that builds darkness layer by layer. But the black wind scatters the group, and the Egyptian explorer is trapped in a hallucination of titans crushing him, the victory of darkness that fills the city of Athens with chaos, and people scream. Arya saves him, but is wounded herself. The pyramids of Yucatan begin to collapse with a sound like Apuch screams coming from the depths of the earth, and Chak's rain is now black and acidic that burns the skin and spreads toxic vapor. The explorers encounter caves from which groaning sounds come, like tortured souls begging. In search of a sign of Chak, one of the caves suddenly collapses with a tremor, and the Iranian explorer is trapped under the rubble. The sense of death intensified by the absolute darkness of the cave and the suffocating smell of soil, the victory of darkness that turns the cave into a trap. Arya tries to pull him out, but the sands come alive and pull him down. Ishtar's temple in Babylon, where the goddess of love once calmed darkness with her beauty, now collapses under Tiamat's shadow with a massive tremor. Stones break like broken hearts, and reliefs fade with a sound like a scream. The explorers witness this victory of darkness, where love turns to hatred, and local people in collective hallucinations rise against each other. The complexity of the alliance. Tiamat, allied with Hel and Vesna, to break the seal, like a chain passing through civilizations. The group finds a small inscription from Ishtar that gives a little light, but the shadow extinguishes it, and one of the explorers goes mad. The shadow crawls out from Ishtar's temple like poisonous and suffocating smoke and penetrates the surrounding cities. Electricity suddenly cuts off, and people see hallucinations of Apophis serpents or Loki crows flying in the streets and staring at them with red eyes. Social chaos begins, with humans rising against each other and buildings catching fire without reason with black flames, the victory of darkness that turns the city into hell, and the explorers are lost in the crowd. Arya sees a hallucination, that she loses her family and screams, but the sound is lost in the chaos. The explorers, having lost one member, decide to go to the Andes Mountains to find a trace of Viracocha, where the god of creation once shaped the world with his staff. But the shadow of Tezcatlipoca the Aztec, with a mask-like face and dark shining eyes, falls on the peaks. The stones tremble with a vibration that shakes the earth. Arya finds a sign of Viracocha's staff that gives a little warmth, a hope that reveals the complexity of the seal. Viracocha built it with the help of Quetzalcoatl, but the Dark Alliance has targeted it. Suddenly, a black earthquake shakes the mountain, and the group is separated. Arya is left alone, and the sense of death is intensified by the earth's tremor. The Great Wall of China is hidden under black fog that seems alive and breathing, where Shangdi preserved the sky with his justice. The explorers encounter shadow-like dragons that carry the whisper of corrupted Long Wang, dragons with black scales that poison the air. The victory of darkness that collapses part of the wall with a roar and brings chaos to the plains. The Egyptian explorer hears a whisper that speaks of the alliance of dragons with Tiamat, but stones fall on him and the sense of death approaches. Arya saves him, but is wounded herself. Mount Fuji trembles under black clouds that seem like clouds of death, where Amaterasu brought the sun with her light. The explorers, searching for a trace of Amaterasu, encounter mysterious eclipses that awaken the dark Tsukiyomi. The sky becomes completely black, and the group is trapped in absolute darkness, the complexity of the alliance. Tsukiyomi allied with Apophis to swallow the light. But a small ray from Amaterasu shows the way, a hope that quickly fades, and Arya feels the darkness penetrating into her. The jungles of Ghana are hidden under black webs of Anansi that seem like living and suffocating traps that tighten with every movement, where the spider gave wisdom. The shadows darken the webs, and the explorers encounter giant spiders that devour the light and stare with multiple eyes, the victory of darkness that turns the jungle into a trap, and one of the explorers is trapped in the webs. The sense of cold intensified by the stickiness of the webs and the smell of poison. Arya hesitates for a moment, as if something inside her holds her back, and the explorer remains in the webs without rescue. The shadows swallow him, and Arya continues without explanation. The stone circles of Ireland shine under black fog that seems like the breath of death and brings the smell of damp, dead soil, where Dagda preserved life with his staff. Morrigan, the dark war goddess, wails, a sound like the screech of deadly birds, and the explorers encounter wandering spirits that simulate dead loved ones and touch with cold hands, a secret revealed. Dagda built the seal with Perun, but the Dark Alliance has targeted it. The group sees a hallucination that they are killing each other, but Arya saves them with her vision, although her gaze has changed a bit, as if something inside her has become calmer. The Navajo desert is hidden under black sandstorms that whirl the sands like deadly waves, where the spirits of the earth kept balance. The explorers find an inscription that speaks of gates of darkness, gates hidden in different civilizations, a complexity that indicates a global network of seals. But the massive shadow pursues them, and the sands come alive and swallow feet. Arya saves the inscription, but feels the darkness penetrating her soul, her eyes empty for a moment. The Colorado Plateaus tremble under black clouds, where the Hopi stars predicted the future. The shadows devour the stars with a swallowing sound, and the explorers feel the darkness surrounding them, the victory of darkness that plunges the plateau into darkness. But the inscription promises the gates. The group escapes, but Arya slightly changes the path, as if guiding toward a darker place without the group noticing. And she feels the darkness growing inside her, changing her memories. The new inscription shines in Arya's hand, but the massive shadow with red eyes approaches, whispering about gates that, if opened, will release eternal darkness. The world is on the brink of collapse, but where are these gates, and what danger awaits?